The plan to open one of the world's most important museums displays remarkable unawareness of cultural heritage management. Iraqi archaeologists.
Welcome back to Inside Iraq. We are discussing the future of Iraq's treasure with Donnie George and Zainab al-Bahrani. Donnie George, I read a little comment by Professor Maguire Gibson, who is a renowned international scholar of Mesopotamian civilization, says the looting of Iraq still goes on. Exactly what he meant?
Well, he meant that, yes, the looting of the Iraq Museum had stopped, but the looting of the archaeological sites is still going on. Until maybe this moment we are speaking, there are looters in some of the sites digging for antiquities. And this is a completely destruction of evidence of human culture. And it's still going on. And no one is stopping that. And yes, these are poor people in the southern part of Iraq, but this does not give them the right to destroy this kind of culture. I believe that somebody must do something for this. It's a big problem. It's a problem of the Iraqi people because they don't have food for their children, these people who are working there. They do work and dig for just a handful of dollars, and just selling the culture, selling the civilization, very easy, destroying the information, very easy, which is, I believe, it's an ongoing crime that's happening to the cultural heritage of the Iraqis and the mankind all over the world.
Zainab al-Bahrani, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, I completely agree. I think that there are two problems here. One problem is that the government has not done enough to protect the archaeological sites with guards, as any other antiquities-rich country in the world would do, like Greece or Italy or Egypt. We're very poor in site guards. And the other problem is, of course, the entire infrastructure of the country is a mess. So if you don't have jobs for people, if you don't have water and electricity and work for people, of course they turn to looting because they need to feed their families. So I think it needs to be solved on both of these levels.
Donnie, when you were Director General of the Ministry of Museum, there was an amnesty issued by the Ministry of Culture for the return of these stolen items without a question being asked. How many items were returned, and do you think those stolen items, perhaps they are all over the world, will ever come back to Iraq?
One thing I would like to mention, that the amnesty program is in the Iraqi law of antiquities, and we have always worked with that. And of course, we emphasized on that and we advertised for that after the looting of the Iraq Museum. Yes, Iraqis bring things, and they brought things back from the ones that were looted from the museum, and sometimes from the ones who are looted from the archaeological sites. Together with that, the looting of the museum has become a kind of an international work for all kind of law enforcement and customs. Everybody is alerted. I do have sometimes contacts from some parts of the world that I never imagined that one will contact me about something they found, some customs they found in their airport. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for everybody to cooperate and work together and bring these antiquities back. And almost every day we are having news of Iraqi material discovered in South Africa, discovered in Lima in Peru, and discovered in Europe, or even here in the United States. So this was not like that before, but it's happening now. I really love to praise the law enforcement, the customs, all over the world, because they are alerted and they work together and try to help the Iraqis to get things back to the Iraq Museum.
Zainab al-Bahrani, in addition to the loss of these priceless artifacts, many experts of Mesopotamian civilization like Donnie George. He abhors to talk about himself personally and what happened to him and the threats that he was subjected to, that a country he loves and the country he served for more than 30 years. But let me ask you, from your knowledge about Iraqi experts and those who fled the country, do you think they will ever come back along with these items that they have been cataloged? Will we ever see the Iraqi museum as it was, say, 10, 15 years ago?
To be honest, I'm very pessimistic. I think that Iraq will have experts again in the future, but I doubt very much that the ones who have left will ever go back in their lifetimes. I think the great tragedy of what happened is that our cultural heritage has been destroyed on so many levels. It's not just the destruction of the archaeological sites or the looting of the museums and the libraries. It's also the killing of the intellectuals, the exile of the intellectuals, the loss of a whole system of knowledge that has disappeared in the past years. So that's the great tragedy on so many levels.
Donnie George, of course, when the history will be written, it will say something like that the criminal aspect of the Iraqi society contributed to the destruction and looting of the museum. We don't know whether there were international criminals involved or not. But this problem was avoidable, wasn't it? Somebody called it a cultural genocide. It was avoidable, wasn't it?
Well, yes, of course. I myself even called it the crime of the century, because the looted material belongs to everybody in the whole world, and to loot something that belongs to everybody, this is the largest crime that can happen, because they have stolen things that belong to each one of us. It was avoidable. It was. I would say from the people responsible in the museum, they should have taken better care of the museum, and from the coalition forces that were in the street of the museum.
Let me stop you for just a second, Donnie George, and tell you the following.
Yes.
There were many reports that actually coalition forces nearby the museum, they opened the gate to the museum, and some soldiers, they said, "Be my guest, go ahead, go inside." Are these true stories?
Well, we've heard about those stories, not in the museum, in other places, in the palaces of Saddam, yes. But to be precise, there was a tank standing about 80 to maybe 90 yards from the main gate of the museum. One of our staff went there to that tank and begged them through a translator, through an interpreter, to move the tank to come and protect the museum, because there were about 300, 400 people outside with toll bars and hammers. They wanted to go in. The man in charge of the tank made a call and said to our man, "We are sorry, we don't have orders for that." So believe me, if that tank had moved, I'm not blaming that guy, because I know, and everybody knows, military people work according to orders. I'm not blaming him, but if the tank had been moved those yards and stood in front of the museum and pushed those people out, nothing would have happened to the museum. Absolutely nothing. But the building was left alone with these people concerning it as, you know, this is another governmental building, and they went in and smashed and trashed and stole whatever they could take.
Zainab al-Bahrani, let me take a final comment from you to wrap up the show for me. You were pessimistic, but there is an international effort for the collection, recovery, and return of those items. Why aren't you satisfied with that international effort?
Because it's not enough. It's simply not enough. It's a band-aid for a really huge tragedy. The museum looting is just a minor detail. It's just the tip of a huge iceberg of cultural disaster. So I don't see that returning some stolen artifacts is enough. I mean, there's the destruction of all of the archaeological sites through looting. There's the destruction of archaeological sites by placing military bases. There's damage by reconstruction. there's so much that's being destroyed, so that the return of looted items is really a minor detail in the larger picture.
Zainab al-Bahrani, Donnie George, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To access the show and to send us your comments, please go to aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until we meet again, have a great week.